The 1954-1960 Grand Prix Formula was for 2.5-litre unsupercharged cars and 750cc supercharged cars. No one ever supercharged a 750cc during this period, but it was, however, one of the most progressive and stimulating ever. There was the development of fuel injection and other advances in engine design, plus a genuine revolution in the layout of chassis design and suspension. This had advanced little since the days of the 750-kilogram formula of the 1930s. Now all this was about to be turned around, particularly during the years of 1957 to 1959, when Coopers proved the advantage of the mid-engined configuration. 14 different manufacturers took part in Grand Prix during the 7 years of the formula's life. It was during this period that the modern idea of kit cars was born. It started by the introduction of the Coventry Climax engine, used by both Cooper and Lotus. Ferrari, Maserati and Gordini all entered the new season with developments of their existing Formula 2 cars, enlarging the engines but leaving the chassis and body shape virtually the same. Ferrari had the Tipo 625, which was a Formula 2 car but fitted now with the 2.5-litre version of the 4-cylinder engine, and the Tipo 555 with its side-mounted fuel tanks and rather bulbous shape. This was known as the Squalo. It was a difficult car to drive. Maserati's Contender was destined to become one of the all-time great Grand Prix cars. It was based on the Formula 2 car. The chassis was designed by Valerio Carlotti, later famous for his gearbox designs, while the engine was designed by Bellantani and Colombo. The development of the car was in the capable hands of Giulio Alfieri. Throughout its life, the 250F was a successful car. A total of 34 250Fs were built between 1954 and 1958. Gordini did not make any significant design alterations to their 6-cylinder Type 16. Neither of the two new contenders, Mercedes-Benz and Lancia, were ready to start racing at the beginning of the season in Argentina. So Mercedes released Fangio to race the new Maserati until their car was ready. Ferrari had signed Gonzalez, Hawthorne, Farina and Trantignan, Lancia, Ascari, Villoresi and the up-and-coming Eugenio Castellotti. Following a successful policy of the past, apart from the works team, Maseratis were driven by Onofre Merriman, a protege of Fangio's, Sergio Mantovani, Harry Schell, Bira, Roy Salvadori and Stirling Moss, who until this time had insisted on driving British cars, but now had seen that he had no option but to change to the Italian manufacturer.
I'm British, I prefer British cars, and all the time they were available, I drove for them. I mean, at that time, of course, Vanwell hadn't arrived, and up till that point we'd had the HWMs, and then they faded out, and then Leslie Johnson brought out the E-Type, which was a flop, and then I thought, well, what can I do? I'll try and get a Cooper, and I made a lot of not too smart choices, if you like, but not all options were open to me. But I wanted to drive British because I speak the language. I couldn't at that time speak much French. I couldn't speak Italian or German. And anyway, I'm English. And the green cars are what I wanted to drive. So that is why I did persevere with them until it was impossible not to go foreign.
The World Drivers' Championship began in Argentina and then moved after a long break to Belgium. Both races were won by Fangio in a 250F Maserati. 1954 was to be the last real season for the V16 BRM. Tony Rudd had joined BRM from Rolls-Royce to develop the supercharger. By now, he'd become a power in the team and was given permission by Sir Alfred Owen to build a lighter, smaller Mark II BRM. The new car made its debut in the Easter Monday meeting at Goodwood. Wharton won the first race in the old Mark I, with Flockhart in the Mark II fourth. Wharton drove again in the Mark I in the final and had a tremendous battle with Roy Salvadori in the brand new Gilbey Engineering Maserati 250F. This ended when they collided, putting Salvadori out of the race. Wharton carried on and won, but the car was so badly damaged that it had to be scrapped after the event. Flockhart was fourth, again with a severe misfire. Flockhart then took the new car to Snetterton and won easily. The team went to Aintree for the first meeting on the new circuit. In this first event, the course was used anti-clockwise. The opposition to BRM came from Peter Collins with Tony Vandervelde's thin wall special, a thinly disguised 4.5-litre Ferrari. Sterling Moss and Roy Salvadori with their full 250Fs, and Bera's half-modified Formula 2 car with a 250F engine. Flockhart won his heat from Salvadori's Maserati. In the final, Wharton spun off, leaving Flockhart to finish third to Moss and Collins after losing 90 seconds when he spun off.
If you were looking at a racing car that you've driven over a very long period of time, which would you look at as being your favourite?
Oh, the 250F.
Why?
Well, I suppose that the Grand Prix drivers at the time did a season with it, perhaps 2 seasons, if they were in the works team. I've done over 20 years with them. And we've just sort of grown old together.
So the first one that you drove then was the original 1954 car, which was a louvered bonnet with a Maserati Trident in the...
Not the first one I drove, but I have driven one of the very first cars, yes.
Yeah, tell me about that.
Absolutely delightful. It was interesting for me, in fact, because I came back to this car, as it were, from having driven the final car, the Piccolo, which was the last one they ever made. And the characteristics are almost identical. With a 250F, it's big, it's strong, it was designed to last 300-mile races on bumpy street circuits. The brakes were very powerful. You made a comment about the drum brake aspect. There's nothing wrong with drum brakes, as long as they've been set up by somebody who understands them. And I have never had any trouble overtaking anybody in a braking area when they've got disc brakes.
In 1954, the 250F faced challenges not just from Ferrari, its natural enemy, but also from Mercedes-Benz as well. The 250F was basically an unsophisticated workmanlike machine with space frame, coil wishbone, IFS and a Dion rear end, mated to a 5-speed gearbox. It made its debut in Argentina in the hands of Juan Manuel Fangio, who won the race and went on to win the Belgian Grand Prix before leaving Maserati to join the Mercedes-Benz team. The first weekend of July 1954 was of the greatest significance, with the arrival of the Mercedes-Benz team at Reims for the French Grand Prix. 40 years before, on July the 5th, Mercedes had won the French Grand Prix at Lyon, taking the first 3 places led by Christian Laischlanger, beating the arch-rivals at Peugeot. 20 years later, on the 1st of July 1934, the W125 750-kilogram cars had raced for the first time at Montlhéry. At Reims, the 3 streamlined 8-cylinder W196 Mercedes were on the starting line for Fangio and the German drivers Karl Kling and Hans Hermann. They were soon seen to be a serious threat, Fangio easily taking pole position. From the start, Fangio and Kling pulled effortlessly away from the opposition and took the first 2 places, Fangio and Kling exchanging the lead between them. Hans Hermann broke the lap record before having to retire with his Mercedes engine overheating. The Mercedes, with all the technical knowledge available to Daimler-Benz engineers, was the best thought-out Grand Prix car of its era. Among the revolutionary new features were desmodromic valve operation, direct fuel injection, and a fully streamlined body, said to have an advantage of 1 second a lap on first circuits like Reims. The performance of the Mercedes at Reims caused some concern to the opposition, but the result of the next race, the British Grand Prix at Silverstone, was a great disappointment to the German team. Ferrari took the first 2 places, driven by Gonzalez and Hawthorne, with Merriman third for Maserati. Fangio could only manage 4th place in a car with all-enveloping bodywork that restricted his visibility from the cockpit and caused him to hit a number of marker barrels. Sterling Moss had put in a fine performance with his private Maserati now being run with work support, and was well up with the leaders until his retirement.
The great thing about Maserati is their cars were beautiful to handle. I mean, a Maserati was a much nicer car to drive. A 250F was far nicer than the 196. At the beginning of the year I bought the car, and then the factory thought I was doing fairly well and offered me theirs, which is quite an interesting story in itself. When I bought the car, it was something you could do 7,072 with a maximum revs. We had an agreement with Maserati that as things were developed, I would get them. And I'm going down the straight, Monza or somewhere. No, earlier than Monza, I think. And John Berry, a factory manager, going past me, and I said, what have you got to his car? They said, well, he's got bigger valves. I said, well, why haven't I got them? He said, well, they said to me, well, we wouldn't want to give them to you until they're tried and tested, you see. So well, I was always one behind. This was before I joined the factory. I was always one behind, although they were nice people. So then when they came to me later in that year, it must have been a very early race, and said, look, would you like to drive a factory car? I said, certainly. And when I got in the factory car, then the rev limit went straight up from 772 up to 8,000. Same sort of car, because they were rebuilding them all the time. And it made a very big difference, obviously, but we did get a lot of mechanical failures.
A new Mercedes was produced for the German Grand Prix at the Nürburgring with conventional bodywork. Moss was now in the Maserati team, and during practice, the young Argentinian driver, Onofre Merriman, who was a protege of Fangio's, crashed his Maserati and was killed. Fangio, in spite of the shock of his friend's death, won the race, but Gonzalez was deeply affected, stopped halfway and handed his car over to Mike Hawthorn. The 1954 German Grand Prix also saw the final appearance in Grand Prix racing of the legend of German pre-war racing, Hermann Lang, who retired while in second place with a seized engine. The Swiss Grand Prix at Bern was the last one held on the difficult Bermengarten circuit. Gonzalez in a Ferrari was the fastest in practice and took pole position. In the race, Fangio led from the start, initially chased by Moss and Hawthorn until their retirement at half distance. Fangio went on to win from Gonzalez in second place for Ferrari. His teammate Hermann's Mercedes in third place.
When I tried out for Mercedes, I remember it happened, my father and manager went to Neubau without my knowing and said, will you take Sterling next year? This was in 53, when they heard that the Mercedes were coming out in 54. And Neubau said to them, he hasn't had sufficient experience in a potential winning car. He's done very well with his HWMs and those things, but he hasn't driven a really potential winner. He ought to get a car where he can show how well he can do when he's got a car that might win. And that was actually what made me buy the 250F.
Okay, this is a freezer, not a time capsule. Sometimes the house itself can tell you how a young homeowner is turning into their parents.
Not those two.
Yep, they're gone.
Forever?
Yep.
That there is Progressive's Home Quote Explorer website, where I compared home insurance rates.
We don't need to print the internet. Some are beyond help. I will give you $100 if you can tell me what this is.
Scotch egg.
It's a meatball.
Progressive can't help you from becoming your parents, but we can help you compare rates on home insurance with Home Quote Explorer.
We've got a lot of work to do.
Life happens out there. It's where you'll find a million little moments.
What's next?
But the biggest memories happen when you experience out there through their eyes. So Nature Valley has donated $8 million and counting to help preserve our national parks for you, your kids, and one day their kids to enjoy. Life happens out there.
We're America's Test Kitchen, and this is ATK Presents, a mashup of all things science.
This is an accelerated durability test.
Cooking and kitchen gear.
Let me show you. Look at this. Whoa, whoa.
And you're ready to party.
It's pretty great.
Oh, I'm so excited. I can't wait to eat this.
I think I need a moment. Cheers.
Cheers.
What is this? Taken? Am I tooken? Alan?
I'm here to save you.
Ow!
She has the key to finding the lost treasure.
After them! I am driving. Oh, 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 oh.
Ah, what is that?
Just pick it and fling it.
You pick it and fling it. Don't make that sound.
getting you out of here.
Why are you so handsome?
My dad was a weatherman.
The Lost City, rated PG-13, now streaming on Paramount+.
Periodically during the year, Lancia had released Ascari and Villarace to drive other marques, primarily Maserati. And the Italian Grand Prix was much closer as a result of this. Alberto Ascari returned to Ferrari for a one-off drive and held the lead for 49 laps, fending off a strong challenge from Fangio's Mercedes, Stirling Moss's Maserati, and also Villarace, who drove an exceptional race until he had to retire. Ascari's retirement was caused by transmission trouble, but the star of the race was Moss, who took over the lead and pulled away from Fangio, until failing oil pressure forced his retirement.
We did get a lot of mechanical failures, and in that particular race I think it was an oil tank probably cracked or something. I mean, I don't know why it did. I mean, it didn't hit anything, and of course that was it. And I was out. It was obviously a great tragedy in front of the Italians. I mean, to drive an Italian car and win in Italy, I mean, it really is the thing to do, I can tell you. Maserati have never been quite as the Italians never quite as fired up about Mazda as they are Ferrari, but having said that, they're still Italians. They still like to see somebody trying and having a go, and it was unfortunate.
This let Fangio into the lead, which he maintained to the finish to win from Hawthorne's Ferrari. The final race of the 1954 season was the Spanish Grand Prix at Barcelona. Hawthorne then went on to win this race, after the early leader, Ascari, had retired his new Lancia in its debut with a clutch problem. Fangio could only finish third with overheating problems due to litter collecting in the radiator air intake. After 2 wins for Maserati and 4 for Mercedes, Fangio won his second world title, with Gonzalez second and Mike Hawthorne third. In its debut race, the new Lancia D50 had proved to be very fast. The car was designed by the former Alfa Romeo designer Vittorio Jano. It was powered by a powerful V8 engine, which interestingly was used as a load-bearing structural member, a feature common now in motor racing. What gave the Lancia its distinctive appearance was the location of the fuel tanks on pontoons between the wheels on each side of the car. This was to aid the weight distribution and airflow. The other new car was the Vanwall. This was built by industrialist Tony Vanderville in collaboration with the Norton Motorcycle Company, and featured a 4-cylinder engine, first of 2 litres, then 2.3 litres, and finally 2.5 litres. It was first raced in the International Trophy at Silverstone by Alan Brown, after which the driving was taken over in the British and Italian Grand Prix by Peter Collins. One of your major claims to fame has to be that you were the first person to drive the Vanwall.
Yes, I did all the testing on the first Vanwall, and then I drove that particular car, the Vanwall Special, at Silverstone on its first outing.
So why didn't you drive it again?
You'd have to ask Tony Vanderville.
Sports car racing was to see the introduction of another new car, the Jaguar D-Type.
The D-Type, as you know, was this beautiful shape and monocoque and whatnot. It also had other developments. It had dry sump lubrication. It had 275 horsepower instead of 220 horsepower. It had a 4-speed synchronous gearbox, which we had no synchro on the first speed on the C-Type, which meant the drivers couldn't change in the first gear very conveniently. And it had updated disc brakes. It had alloy disc wheels, because we had some spoke breakages in 1953. And what is more, it had the first low-profile tyre of anybody had used in motor racing, which nobody ever rumbled. With a radial construction tyre with steel bracing and low profile. And funny part, nobody ever asked a question.
I didn't win the lawsuit, but everybody knows I wrote that song.
Flo? Gosh, it's been forever. You look fantastic. It's John. Ham, from the blind date we went on years ago?
Ah, the struggling actor who didn't believe he could save his snapshot based on how and how much he drives.
I'd love to talk about it over dinner sometime.
Well, I usually don't talk on the phone during dinner, but for potential customer Tom Ham, I will make an exception.
Oh, boy.
For every action, there's a Pluto TV reaction.
Hot damn.
You're operational now.
You can't stop it.
Watch our most explosive channel yet, only on Pluto TV.
I found this flaw. There's a loophole that the lottery didn't see, and I won $15,000.
Here we go back.
The more we bet, the better the odds.
We're betting $500,000.
Go big or go home.
Are you guys drug dealers?
We're professional lottery players.
That isn't a thing.
It is now.
Jerry and Marge Go Large. Rated PG-13.
Grandpa, race ya.
Le Mans 1954 was more notable for those expected entries which failed to materialize. Lancia, Mercedes-Benz, Austin Healey and the Maserati team, which met with an accident on the way to the circuit. Jaguar, however, had entered 3 of the new D-types, together with a Belgian-owned C-type. The main opposition was from 3 big Ferrari 375 Plus 4.9-litre models. There were 2 other Ferraris entered by Briggs Cunningham's American team, which also entered 2 of their own C4R models. Aston Martin also had a strong entry. 5 Aston Martins and a single Lagonda. The Lagonda was the new 4.5-litre V12 engined car based on the DB3S frame. But the car had proved difficult to develop, and the second one of the team was replaced by a supercharged DB3S. There was a further open DB3S and then 2 closed DB3S models. The French opposition was from Talbot and Gordini, who had entered a 2.5-litre 6 and a new 3-litre 8-cylinder. The race from the start turned out to be a complete domination by Jaguar and Ferrari. But the other important factor was the weather, which varied during the race from a fine drizzle to a persistent downpour, with only short periods of dry weather. While the Jaguars had the edge over the Ferrari in terms of road holding in the wet, the extra power of the Ferrari told in the dry. From the start, the Gonzales Trantignan Ferrari took the lead from its teammate of Umberto Maglione and Paulo Mazzotto. They were pursued by the Jaguars of Moss and Walker, and Hamilton and Rolt, the previous year's winner. An early retirement was the Lagonda when driven by Eric Thompson. This spun into the bank at the S's and had to retire when its rear lights could not be repaired. The Maglione-Mazzotto Ferrari retired in mid-evening with a gearbox problem. Other retirements included 2 Aston Martins, 2 Talbots, a Gordini and the Jaguar of Moss and Walker. This left the Gonzales Trantignan Ferrari in the lead from the Rolt Hamilton Jaguar. The 2 Aston Martin coupes crashed at White House. The Parnell Salvadori supercharged Aston Martin outlasted all the other cars in the team. That was until midday on Sunday, when it blew a head gasket and was withdrawn. The last Aston Martin in the race was retired. By early afternoon, the Rolt Hamilton Jaguar was trying to catch up time. It began to close on the leading Ferrari. Rolt had collided with a backmarker and had to pit to repair the damage. The Ferrari had had its share of drama when a flat battery had to be changed before it would restart, allowing the Jaguar almost to catch it. But within the last half hour of the race, it stopped raining, and Gonzalez speeded up to win by 2.5 miles at an average of 105.145 miles per hour for the 24 hours. The Jaguar was second, the Spear Johnston Cunningham third, and the Belgian C-Type in fourth place. The Bristol team won the 2-litre class, finishing 7th, 8th and 9th.
So I said, yeah, you're saving hundreds with the home and auto bundle from Progressive, but there's no saving that casserole.
I just love that word bundle. It's so fun. So, two things coming together like a force of nature. Like it was really meant to be,
Yes. Yes, I do. I'm so glad you want to save money. Rodney, set up a bundle for John Hamm.
Of course. John, is it still cool if I catch a ride home with you?
I never said it was.
But technically you didn't say it wasn't.
It's not.
Yet.
I found this flaw. There's a loophole that the lottery didn't see, and I won $15,000.
And we go back.
The more we bet, the better the odds.
We're betting $500,000.
Go big or go home.
Are you guys drug dealers?
We're professional lottery players.
That isn't a thing.
It is now.
Jerry and Marge Go Large. Rated PG-13.
Grandpa, race ya.
Well, it was quite the ride.
Keep going, keep going, keep going.
Catch the best of MTV's hit programming on MTV Pluto TV.
Well, hello there.
With shows like 16 and Pregnant.
What is that? Monster baby in there.
Punk'd.
Let's not go. What the hell did you do? You got a man in here.
Cribs.
Welcome to my crib.
And Are You the One?
I'm husband material.
You definitely want your MTV Pluto TV.
I'm gonna explode rainbows and butterflies and unicorns.
Watch all of your favorites on MTV Pluto TV.
During the September Goodwood meeting, Mike Hawthorne drove the new Vanwall Grand Prix car alongside Collins in the thin wall. Collins won the race, with Wharton second, complaining of a misfire due to faulty plugs. Flockhart, meanwhile, had spun off into a turnip heap. The last meeting of the year was at Aintree, this time run in a clockwise direction. The race was won by Sterling Moss, now with full works backing for his private Maserati. Flockhart was third, again plagued by plug trouble. The race was memorable for a great battle between Harry Schell's 250F Maserati and Mike Hawthorne in the van wall, eventually won by Hawthorne when Schell slid wide at the last corner. The Alpine Rally, or the Coupe des Alpes, has a history stretching back to the Austrian Alpine Rally of the pre-1914 days. There was no outright winner, but a cup, the Coupe des Alpes, was presented for a penalty-free performance. Roots, with their Sunbeam Alpine, invited Sheila Van Dam to drive in the event, alongside a team of Sterling Moss, Peter Collins, and Mike Hawthorne in 1954. The Triumph TR2 was just starting its Alpine career. Here are Moss and Collins prior to the start. For Collins, this wasn't a happy event. He fell out at a fairly early stage with his co-driver. Moss had won a Coupe des Alpes in 1952 and 53 driving for Sunbeam, so was back to try and win a gold one for 3 successive performances in 1954. Fraser-Nash were a front runner here with the Mille Miglia version of their Bristol-engined car. Competitors set off from Nice in beautiful sunny weather. It's hard to appreciate how difficult this event was until you look at the terrain and, of course, the cars of the era. The number of Gold Cups awarded is a fair indication of how difficult this could be. XK120 Jaguars had long been successful in this event, and the Austin Healey was to become a force to be reckoned with. The Sunbeam's main problem was that they were underpowered, and as the rally got tighter, it was more and more difficult to win a Coupe des Alpes. Moss forced the pace with his usual fervour. Ken Richardson, late of BRM, was responsible for team managing the TR2s. The Alpines were finding life difficult on this particular event. They were coming to the end of their development. Mark 7 Jaguars also took part. And the famous Le Mans Fraser-Nash was a fine rally car of its day. It's often forgotten that both Moss and Peter Collins were fine rally drivers. They're remembered for their racing performances, but as rally drivers, they were of frontline caliber. It was almost willpower alone that saw the Alpine finish in the hands of an exhausted Moss and take that coveted Coupe des Alpes for the 3rd time. It's one of the achievements of which Sterling is very proud indeed, and so he should be. For Mercedes-Benz, there was one other event in 1954, the Grosse Prix de Berlin, a Formula One race held on the Avers circuit. In pre-war years, a feature of this circuit were the banked turns at each end. By now, one had gone. It was in the eastern zone of Berlin, so a normal hairpin turn was substituted. It was the Avers that had brought streamlining to motor racing in the 1930s. The fully streamlined W196 was in the hands of Fangio, Carl Kling and Hans Hermann for this race. Once again, Hermann Lang was unlucky and didn't get the opportunity to say farewell to his adoring German public. This was something of a demonstration, since Gordini was the only opposition, Ferrari having decided to stay away, as did Maserati. The drivers took it in turns to lead, but it was pre-decided that should the cars all last, and with Mercedes that was decidedly unusual if they didn't, Carl Kling would take the opportunity for a win on German soil. For once, the event worked out as scripted. Mercedes first, second and third, and Carl Kling to be the winner. In the 1954 season, Kling had acquitted himself well, but Mercedes were already aware of the necessity to have another frontline driver in the team. Plans for this were already going ahead when the Avers race was held. For Hans Hermann, It had not been a wonderful start to a Grand Prix career. For Kling, it was his only win at the wheel of a Grand Prix car. A disenchanted Lang announced his retirement.
I didn't win the lawsuit, but everybody knows I wrote that song.
Flo? Gosh, it's been forever. You look fantastic. It's John. Ham, from the blind date we went on years ago?
Ah, the struggling actor who didn't believe he could save his snapshot based on how and how much he drives.
I'd love to talk about it over dinner sometime.
Well, I usually don't talk on the phone during dinner, but for potential customer Tom Ham, I will make an exception.
Oh, boy.
Life happens out there. It's where you'll find a million little moments.
What's next?
But the biggest memories happen when you experience out there through their eyes. So Nature Valley has donated $8 million and counting to help preserve our national parks for you, your kids, and one day their kids to enjoy. Life happens out there.
We're America's Test Kitchen, and this is ATK Presents, a mashup of all things science.
This is an accelerated durability test.
Cooking and kitchen gear.
Let me show you. Look at this.
Whoa, whoa. And you're ready to party. It's pretty great. Oh, I'm so excited. I can't wait to eat this.
I think I need a moment. Cheers.
Cheers.
What is this? Taken? Am I tooken? Alan?
I'm here to save you.
Ow! She has the key to finding the lost treasure. After them!
I am driving. Oh.
What is that?
Just pick it and fling it.
You pick it and fling it!
Don't make that sound. Getting you out of here.
Why are you so handsome?
My dad was a weatherman.
The Lost City, rated PG-13, now streaming on Paramount+.
Fangio received an award from Mercedes. The stage was set for Mercedes-Benz to go forward into 1955 and try to take the title once more. The 1955 season was to become one of the blackest in the history of motorsport, and to have a direct influence on the running of motorsport, not just for the next decade, but indeed up to the present day. At the beginning of the year, Mercedes team chief Alfred Neuber signed up Stirling Moss as number 2 to Fangio. The W196 was refined. The wheelbase of the car could be changed with a different chassis for often very different races. As well as this, the streamlined body could be used, but more often than not, it was the normal single-seater body that was seen. The front brakes were mounted outboard, and the engine had been developed to produce 290 brake horsepower. Daimler-Benz also had introduced a new sports car. This was the 300 SLR, which was to play a prominent part in the battle for the 1955 Sports Car Championship. The season started at the Argentinian Grand Prix in Buenos Aires, in tremendously hot weather. Temperatures in the shade soared to 37 degrees centigrade. The ground temperature reached 52 degrees centigrade, and virtually every driver in the race, which lasted 3 hours, had to stop and let someone else take over his car due to exhaustion. The only exception to this was Fangio and Roberto Mieres in a Maserati, both Argentinians. Fangio won the race from Gonzalez's Ferrari. The scene now moved to Sebring for the annual 12-hour race. This was to see a battle between Ferrari and the Briggs Cunningham-entered D-Type Jaguar. By now, Mike Hawthorne had replaced Moss in the Jaguar team, and it was the Cunningham Jaguar driven by Hawthorne and Phil Walters that drove superbly to victory, a good start to the season for Jaguar. The next event was to be a personal triumph for Stirling Moss, the Mille Miglia. In this, he was partnered by the journalist Dennis Jenkinson. Moss drove the new 3-litre 8-cylinder Mercedes 300 SLR. But his great skill was aided and abetted by that of Jenkinson, who had come forward with pace notes, similar to those that are used in modern-day rallying, to inform Moss where he could go quickly and where he should slow. Moss then moved into the lead at Rome, where the order was Moss, Terruffi with the Ferrari, Hermann, Karl Kling and Fangio. In the final stages, Terruffi, Kling and Hermann all retired, leaving Moss to win with Fangio second. Moss's record average of 98.5 miles per hour was to stand for all time, and his victory was only the second by a non-Italian in the history of the event. While the Mille Miglia was taking place, the Daily Express International Trophy meeting was held at Silverstone. In the saloon car race, Mike Hawthorn, who had joined the Jaguar team for the 1955 season to drive their sports cars while signing for Van Wall in Grand Prix racing, went straight into the lead, which he held to the finish, winning from Jimmy Stewart, brother of Jackie, and Desmond Titrington, also driving Jaguar Mark VII saloons. In the supporting sports car race, Mike Hawthorn again took the lead in his Works D-Type, followed by the Aston Martin team of DB3Ss. Hawthorn then had to slow when a radiator hose broke, and was passed by Reg Parnell and Roy Salvadori's Aston Martins, who went on to finish first and second. The International Trophy itself was to see the debut of the new B-Series Connaught, with its full-width, all-enveloping body. Rodney Clark and Mike Oliver had continued their development of the pre-war Alta engine, replacing the fuel injection system with two twin-choke Weber carburetors. Two cars were to be driven by Jack Fairman and Desmond Titrington. Mike Hawthorn was entered in a Van Wall. The race, however, was between Roy Salvadori in the Gilby Engineering Maserati and Peter Collins in the BRM Maserati, which was much modified. From the start of the race, the two Maseratis battled for the lead, followed by Fairman's Connaught. Salvadori led initially, but Collins, becoming more confident each lap and on new tyres, was able to take over the lead on lap 25. Salvadori repassed him, only to see Collins retake the lead, which he held to the end of the race. Meanwhile, in Italy, Ascari had won the Turin and the Naples Grand Prix in the new Lancia, and everyone was looking forward to the renewed battle between Ascari and Fangio for the World Championship. In the race, Fangio and Moss were unchallenged in first and second places ahead of the Lancias of Ascari and Castellotti. Disaster was now to strike the Mercedes team, with all three cars retiring with valve gear trouble. Ascari briefly took the lead for Lancia, but before the lap was over, he shot straight off the track and into the harbour at the chicane. Ascari came to the surface unhurt and swam to the rescue boat. These dramatic events left Maurice Trintignant in the lead with an old Ferrari. He was to win from Castellotti's Lancia. This lucky win for Ferrari at Monaco was the only race in 1955 in which Mercedes were unplaced. 4 days after the Monaco race, on May the 26th, 1955, Alberto Ascari was killed in a testing accident with a Ferrari 750 sports car at Monza. The car left the track at the Vallone curve in circumstances which have never been satisfactorily explained. All of Italy mourned the loss of their greatest post-war champion. Born in 1918, Alberto Ascari was the son of Antonio Ascari, who died when his son was but 7 years old in the 1925 French Grand Prix. Ascari had been a motorcyclist prior to taking up cars in 1940. Immediately after the war, he drove in the Cisitalia Circus and was already making a name for himself. He was a great friend and a protégé of Luigi Villoresi. King Farouk of Egypt looks on as one of these races takes place in Egypt. The influence of Villoresi on Ascari's early career saw him go to Maserati. Here he is at the very first race at Silverstone, where the Maseratis had arrived very late in the day. The 4CLT Maserati, San Remo as it was called, was a comparatively new car. Bera's car started from the second row, while Ascari and Villoresi with their semi-works car started from the back row of the grid. They soon started to carve their way up through the field. The pupil-master relationship between Villoresi and Ascari had started during the Second World War when they shared a business interest in a fuel company. Ascari was a far-from-rich man. By now he was married with 2 children. But his driving, to say the least, was exceptional. The 2 4CLTs came through the field to finish in 1st and 2nd places. Villoresi was the winner on this occasion. But Ferrari was always in the background, and although Villoresi disliked him, it was soon apparent that neither Ascari nor Villoresi could afford to go for anyone else other than the Ferrari team. He gave them a victory at Silverstone in 1949. Ferrari decided that the 1.5-litre twin-stage supercharged car was not really the way to go, and soon decided to build unsupercharged cars to challenge the Alfa Romeos with. With the beginning of the World Championship in 1950, Ascari was to be a central figure in these early years. The next Grand Prix was the Belgian Grand Prix at Spa. The Works Lancia team was absent. Gianni Lancia had announced that his team would be disbanded, following the death of Alberto Ascari and as a result of the severe financial difficulties the team's ambitious motor racing program had cost. The racing department was closed, and the cars, engines, spares, plus the services of engineer Vittorio Jano were presented to Ferrari, who also received a subsidy from Fiat to help run his team for 5 years. At Spa, Eugenio Castellotti was to drive a Works Lancia for the final time. Fangio made a superb start and led from Moss and was never challenged. Farina, the 1950 world champion, scored his final World Championship points when he finished in 3rd place for Ferrari, with the Belgian journalist racing driver Paul Frère, an extremely talented man, finishing 4th.
Oh, is that what I think it is? The new DQ All-Star Summer Blizzard lineup? Boom! Oh, that's Girl Scout Thin Mints. New Oreo Dirt Pie, yum. Drumstick with peanuts, cotton candy. Oh, more summer flavors. Official treat of MLB. I'm gonna eat them all. This is fun. Hey, does that mean we won? Oh, but it was close. Oh, yeah, I hear ya. But just looking around, like, that's a lot of smiles, so looks like a win to me. DQ, happy tastes good.
Okay, snacks and popcorn are going to be expensive. Let's just accept that. Going to the movies can be a lot for young homeowners turning into their parents.
Bathrooms. Even if you don't have to go, you should try.
We all know where the bathroom is and how to use it. Okay?
You know, the Stevensons told me they save money bundling their boat insurance with Progressive.
No one knows who those people are. It can be painful.
Hand me your coats. There's an extra seat right here.
No. We don't need a coat wrangler.
Progressive can't save you from becoming your parents, but we can save you money when you bundle home, auto, and more with us.
No one who made the movies here.
Shall we begin?
Step 1.
Q.
3. That's perfectly normal.
It's an honor.
Here we go.
Why are you so handsome?
My dad was a weatherman.
That sounds big. It's been on my vision board for years. She has the key to finding the lost treasure. After them!
I am driving.
I'm getting you out of here.
Why are you so handsome?
My dad was a weatherman.
The Lost City, rated PG-13, now streaming on Paramount+.
Le Mans in 1955 had more than an interesting entry list and promised to be a memorable event. Mercedes returned with 3 of their 300 SLR models, which had been further developed by now having a novel air brake. This had been tried on the 300 SL. But here at Le Mans, a tonneau panel behind the driver was raised by a hydraulic ram activated by the driver. This innovation was to offset the advantage held by Jaguar and the other teams with disc brakes. Pierre Levesque who had lost the race to Mercedes in 1952, was partnering the American John Fetch. The Frenchman André Simon partnered Carl Kling, and Stirling Moss was placed with Fangio. Their closest rivals were the Jaguars. 3 new cars were entered, along the lines of the D-Type but productionized and with new long-nose bodywork. Their drivers included Mike Hawthorne and Ivor Bueb, and the 1953 winners Rolton Hamilton. The Works Ferrari team were the 121 LM models, 4.4-litre 6-cylinders. Aston Martin entered 3 DB3S and 1 Lagonda V12, while Maserati had entered 2 3-litres and a 2-litre. There was renewed British interest in new race models. These were entered by Cooper, 1 with a Jaguar engine, and 1 the little bobtail with the 1100cc Coventry Climax unit. MG made their return to racing at Le Mans, with the first official works entry since 1935. 3 EX182 prototypes, based on the soon-to-be-announced MGA. And there was a single Austin Healey 100S. Triumph too had taken an interest in Le Mans. Their new car was the TR2, looked after by Ken Richardson, former chief mechanic at BRM. And there was the Kieft, a Connaught, and a most important car. The first Lotus was entered at Le Mans for Ron Flockhart and Colin Chapman himself. One of the few occasions when a constructor has driven his own car at Le Mans. Bristol again entered 3 cars, which were all open-topped, and a special version of the 6-cylinder engine was used. Finally, there were 2 Fraser-Nash. There was a strong Porsche contingent, plus Oscar in the 1500cc class and the usual DB Panhards and Panhard monopoles. These were in the 750cc class, challenged by the Stanguellini and the remarkable twin-boom-bodied Nardi. There was a tremendous feeling of expectation at the start of the race, as the flag fell and the first car away was Castellotti's Ferrari, followed closely by Mike Hawthorne's Jaguar. Fangio's Mercedes and Tony Rolt's Jaguar had both made poor starts, but started to make up for lost time. Hawthorne caught and passed Castellotti, but was soon joined by Fangio. These two proceeded to drive Le Mans as if it was a Grand Prix, in one of the most exciting battles ever seen, constantly passing and repassing. Meanwhile, the Castellotti Ferrari was beginning to drop back. The lap record was broken time after time and finally went to Hawthorne at 122.386 miles per hour. The Fangio-Hawthorne battle continued unabated until just after 6 o'clock. It was then that disaster struck. The first pit stops were due. Hawthorne was the first driver due in and passed Lance Macklin's Austin Healey before pulling over to the offside of the road prior to pulling into the pits. Macklin swerved to the left, but in doing so, put his car in the path of Levesque's Mercedes, who was approaching at high speed, closely followed by Fangio, who was about to lap him. Levesque hit the Austin Healey's tail and was deflected across the track, hitting the safety barrier. Levesque was killed instantly, but the engine and other parts of the wreckage were flung over the barrier and into the crowd with horrific results. In the initial moments after the disaster, the confusion was total, and it was only later that the full horrors became apparent. The race organizers made the correct decision to let the race continue, as 200,000 spectators leaving the circuit would have crippled the rescue operation. The teams did their best to continue to race, despite what they could see across the track. Hawthorne's Jaguar had lost a lap to the Moss Fangio Mercedes in the confusion, with the Rolt Hamilton Jaguar third. Meanwhile, after prolonged consultations between the Mercedes team manager Alfred Neuber and a hastily assembled board meeting at Daimler-Benz in Stuttgart, it was decided at 2 a.m. to withdraw the 2 remaining Mercedes as a mark of respect to the victims of the disaster. At the time, the Moss Fangio car was leading. This gave Jaguar a 1-2 lead followed by Maserati and the Collins Frere Aston Martin DB3S. The Rolt Hamilton Jaguar had to retire with a gearbox problem, as did the Maserati. This led the Collins Frere Aston Martin into second place, followed by the Belgian D-Type. Porsches were to finish 4th, 5th and 6th. The 4th place Porsche of Polansky and von Frankenberg also won the Index of Performance and the Biennial Cup, the first time since 1949 that it had not been won by a Panhard or a Panhard-based car. The 3 Triumph TR2s all finished in good order, but were beaten by one of the MGAs. Another of the MGs finished, but the third car had crashed, landing Dick Jacobs in hospital. The Lotus had been disqualified. Colin Chapman crashed into a sandbank, and while he got free and restarted without permission from the marshal to do so, the organizers took a dim view of this. It was the start of a running battle between Chapman and the Le Mans organizers. The Nardi had been literally swept from the track when caught up in the slipstream of a faster car. So much for aerodynamics of that age. The aftermath of the 1955 Le Mans 24-hour race disaster was a temporary ban on all motor racing in France and a permanent one in Switzerland. The ACO decided that drastic changes would have to be made to the race as well as to the circuit for 1956.